Whether you're servicing or building your Cougar SV shocks for the first time, I'm going to run you through how I build mine. You check the contents to ensure you have everything you need against the manual. Insert the C-clip into the bottom rung of the shock shaft. Place the piston on top with the groove set downwards so it fits over the top of the circlip. Then place the final circlip on top of the shaft. Once placed loosely, use a pair of shock pliers to gently clip the circlip on top and insert the first blue shock O-ring. Then insert the small black spacer, followed by the second shock O-ring, then the black spacer with the lip facing out, before finally tightening on the bottom of the shock cap itself. Screw this until tight. When building the shock collar itself, make sure that the black O-ring sits snugly inside the shock collar to allow it to move freely. This does take a little bit of movement, but when in the correct place, it should disappear inside the collar and loop flush all around. Place the shock collar at the bottom of the body itself, apply some pressure gently, and then screw slowly to ensure that none of the threads become crossed. Firstly, apply a small amount of oil onto the side of the actual shock shaft, and then place the shock shaft into the bottom of the shock and move until free. Ensure that you use the hole on the side of the shock gripper that is slightly raised, meaning that the eyelet should fit in there more gently. Place the eyelet on the table, take the shock bottom and press firmly. Take the shock shaft itself and place it to the centre of the shock. Once there, take a pair of shock grippers, take the actual shock bottom itself and screw on until all of the thread is taken up. Construct the shock cap by placing the diaphragm inside the shock cap itself, making sure that the raised edge faces outwards. Begin by filling the shock up a small amount. Then I move the piston up and down to allow any oil trapped beneath the holes to rise to the surface. When filling with oil, I tend to fill just below the top level of the shock itself, as you don't want to overfill the shock absorber. Once you are happy with the level of the shock oiling, take the shock cap with the bleed hole facing you and slowly tighten the shock and the shock cap together. You will notice that a small amount of oil will start to leak out of the side of the shock, showing that the bladder is doing its job. It's difficult to balance the amount of rebound, so have a couple of goes, but generally you want a nice smooth action that can be matched across all four corners of the car. Heavier oil or less hole pistons will allow the car to generate more pack at the expense of some bump handling, whereas lighter oil or more hole pistons will have the opposite effect. Springs should be chosen to match the characteristics of the piston and the oil. The shock should never feel oversprung or overdamped. For a good starting point with the shocks, refer to the manual or the setups online.